Welcome back. You're on the Morning Express, and my name is Bonney Tunya. This is the way it is. We have a host of issues to talk about, and Benji Ndolo joins me now. Karibu sana. You're enjoying your tea?
I am, and I've been away for a couple of weeks.
Right.
So
we haven't changed much.
Only
that we have a different host.
Yeah. And also the set is a little different, but
upgrading.
Good one. Yeah, exactly.
Great. Benji, we have a host of things that have happened. The past couple of weeks have been dramatic, if I may call it that.
Yes.
Top of the dailies today is Ngilu's troubles.
Yes.
Everyone is commenting about Ngilu's trouble. Adan Kenan says he has 87 signatures. He wants to take Ngilu home.
Okay.
Just paint to us a picture. Let's start from the genesis. I mean, the appointment of wrongful appointments, and we go into even trying to understand why she made these appointments, and she couldn't quite explain. Is this the kind of Ngilu that we expected only 6 months into office?
Exactly, Bonney. As you've said it very well, and good morning again to you and the viewers.
Right.
Charity Ngilu has mostly herself to blame. Charity has a lot of fantastic qualities about herself. She's a tenacious leader.
Right.
She's somebody that has the courage to go against the grain in many ways.
Right.
She has the rare fire in the belly, but she also has this very unfortunate streak. She has a reputation and a track record of corruption. You remember when she was the Ministry of Water,
right,
you had one particular dam which cost, I believe, 600 million shillings, awarded controversially to one contractor. You remember her in front of the parliamentary committee on natural resources,
right,
chaired ironically by her business partner, the member of parliament for Gashoka Mutava Musimi. Something again that the media did not highlight and did not probe.
Right.
And here she was at pains on the record trying to explain if somebody that has names similar to her daughter was actually her daughter. You understand, Bonney?
Right.
And so actually what happened with this particular instance is the former Prime Minister literally saved her from the gallows.
Right.
You know, it was clear that there was a lot of wrongdoing.
Right.
And so she has a track record of this kind of thing. She has gone outside the law. You wonder why. You understand that if you do these kinds of things, then this new director would be absolutely answerable or would owe a lot back to the cabinet secretary.
From a need-to-know basis, Director General of Lands, we're moving from a Commissioner of Lands. Basically, this guy has the power to sign title deeds. Why did we, let's try to fit in her mind, why would we need a different office for a similar duty?
Again, that's the question. And as I'm alluding to here, you can imagine the kind of sense of obligation the Director General would have to the Cabinet Secretary, and the sense of entitlement the Cabinet Secretary would have with the Director General. Suffice to say, therefore, that Ngilu would, in essence, get her way with whatever. She would open herself to being used by very powerful people in this country, big business, senior politicians, to say, Madam
Waziri, it would be easier to make an appointment other than create a whole new office.
But then the appointment would have been made competitively with the vetting of Parliament and what have you, so that somebody would be coming from out there on their credentials, maybe an advertised position, not something where you handpick someone, and then now the big business guys would say, Madam Charity, give me this 300 acres here, give me this 5 acres in town. You know, this is a kind of, and you know, as you know, land is a very sensitive thing, and especially will be more sensitive under the government of Uhuru Kenyatta. As you very well know, what the debates were, you know, prior to the elections on the issue of how much, you know, land the Kenyattas own, how they acquired it, and what have you. So you want to handle that docket in a very integral manner, in a manner that is above board. And so she's gotten herself in hot soup as to what will happen. My guess would be that there will be a cabinet reshuffle soon, as you've seen with reports that Mudavadi may be coming into government. And in that reshuffle, you would see the movement of the likes of Lenku because of the issues that happened in the competency or lack thereof displayed, as well as the likes of Ngilu, because my guess is that President Uhuru Kenyatta does not want any sort of political liability. He already has so much on his plate. He has a lot of big things moving at the same time, including the case. And so you want cabinet secretaries that can hold you up, that can have your back, that you can depend on, that can execute, and that do not distract from the greater agenda.
We didn't see Ngilu's issue come up recently, the biggest get-together in Machakos recently.
Yes.
I was there. Of course, the contention coming from Mudhama, and we'll be getting to that a little later, was an important one. Yes. Cabinet Secretary for Land, Ngilu, is already facing all these troubles. She was there. We didn't see any leader call her out in regard to that. Does this speak on what the Jubilee position is regarding to this matter?
No, Machakos was a bit of a different animal. I was there myself on Friday. It's something that was pretty sensitive. There are lots of tensions because, as you know, Mudhama is a sitting senator. Mudhama is a very influential politician. He's a wealthy guy. He's a big supporter of Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, former Prime Minister as well. And so just for him to... He's also been very vocal. He's an ardent, critic of the Jubilee government. And so I think people are very careful to not use this platform to inflame passions, because it could have easily backfired in front of the president. You understand? And so you want to, tread very cautiously. Remember also that the issues were a little contentious. This particular parts of this land, as has been exposed, do belong to the Ministry of Livestock. And medical,
veterinary services.
Services, exactly. And so I think at some point the governor had conceded that yes, there's questions around how we got it, and we're resolving it. As he said, we've had a cup of tea with Koske, and we're talking. And really, you don't want to, I guess, give ammunition to the critic to say, look, there's an acceptance here that there's a problem with the land. But the cabinet secretary is sitting here, the Minister of Livestock is here, and the president.
We don't want to look bad.
Exactly. So, I think they concentrate more on the bigger issues, and of course, the message and the impetus that Governor Alfred Mutua is bringing is very refreshing. It's very new in Kenyan politics, and so with those major ambitious plans, you don't want to soil the whole thing or have the whole thing backfire on technicalities and what have you. So it was not really the ground to be hammering Mudhama or to be trying to do any
Benji, from a PR point of view, if you're trying to save face for the Jubilee coalition, what would be the best move right now in regards to Ngilu? Should you wait for Kenan to go full hog, or can the president actually make a move?
That's an interesting question. I think that if you've listened to President Kenyatta over the last few days, honestly, if you've listened to him express, and this took a lot of courage, that he's aware that majority of the corruption in Kenya happens in my office, in the office of the president. Wow, that's something for candor. In Kenya, he must be applauded for that. And I think if you look at how he's trying to, for example, in Machakos again, he said, one of the things I'm going to expect as president is that by April 1, we have moved away from the cash systems to electronic. And this is to close the loopholes for eating money, corruption. I like to call it eating money because corruption is many things. You reduce the amount of gravel to put on the road and steal that. But there's also now taking and eating money. And I feel that he's particularly opposed to that. And what he was saying, I remember very well, and the media captured this very well. He's like, we have to change we must, and people are just laughing.
What is,
because they know
what
what
is the
he
president's
means.
best option in this, if he's indeed
given that stance,
to use the opportunity
Bonney, given
to
that
save
stance,
face.
and that's what I'm explaining, then he would be inclined to let her go, because he's sending the message that in my government it is unacceptable to do corruption. That is really a high ideal. It's interesting that with all his problems, President Uhuru might just be able, on the corruption front, to achieve what Kibaki couldn't. Because President Kibaki had it going for him in 2003, big time, until Anglo-leasing. I think barring unforeseen circumstances where the president becomes hostage to the powerful corrupt cartels and forces, etc., it is said, and I have information from very good authorities, that a lot of politicians do understand that Uhuru doesn't eat, he doesn't approve of it, doesn't partake in it, and then they say, well, it's because he doesn't need it, it's because he is who he is and what have you. But I think that he'll send a strong message out that you can't eat money, and that's why I think also you're seeing a lot of the very vociferous prosecution of the likes of NHIF, the Keriches, and what have you.
But Benji, Kenan is telling us he has 87 signatures. Part of the members of parliament who did not sign were raising concern that the nature in which the petition has been rushed reads, there's a lot of malice
mischief,
and mischief into it. Into your point that you're saying, well, maybe it's time for the president to let her go. How will that play into understanding that this move is heavily driven by CORD?
No, I don't think it's a matter of. I mean, there's the obvious what you call unintended outcomes,
right?
Where unintended consequences, where one thing has other outcomes that could favor or disfavor your political strategies or tactics or what have you. And CORD might gain a few points by having Gilu out of the way, but they already scored a big one. Remember, Charity Gilu was a candidate for the Senate. And she was trounced within hours by David Musila.
Right.
I mean, she was trounced, hand over heels, even though she had gotten very serious resources from the Jubilee team, even though she had a chopper, to hop around and campaign all over the place, and even though she had a pretty decent performance track record that she had used to bludgeon Kalonzo Musyoka, her brother and neighbor in that environment, she just didn't make it. And so I don't think it's a big deal for them whether she stays or goes, but I think for the president it'll be a big one to look at how can he make forays into Kambani, how can he continue to build credibility on being a leader that is opposed to corruption, that wants to save these monies that are being stolen in corruption and turn them around for the benefit of the youth, which is a big flagship for them, for the laptops and what have you, and especially in light of the international relations problems we're having, where a lot of our donor partners and the West have basically given Kenya a cold shoulder. So you'd imagine, Bonney, that you want to save some of this money from corruption. As you know, you guys in the media reported very well that there's about 300 billion missing just from the last financial year.
Yes.
I'd imagine if I was a president that if I could find and save that kind of money, that it gives me greater leverage to not, kowtow so much or be very, in need of Germany.
So it is indeed a chance for the president.
It's a chance for him to continue to just. It's a win for him. It's a win for him on credibility. It's a win for him financially on his books, where he will make do with less from out there because he's saving more inside. So I think that is really his focus. As to the real politic of it, I think they actually might let Charity go.
All right, great. Still on leadership, you mentioned earlier when we talked about Machakos City, and just before we go to Machakos City, governors and senators both want to be the boss.
Yes.
Both want to, to call the shots. Let's go back to the Constitution. How clear is it in regards to who runs the show?
I think that we have a big problem in Kenya. I think Kithiki Kindure and Murkomen are being disingenuous, are being dishonest, are being almost clownish. What they're doing is not leadership. The Constitution was not drafted, Bonney, by angels. It was drafted by human beings. So you're going to have very soft areas where there are loopholes. But see, these loopholes have not been created. They are basically, you could say, maybe a small mistake, a technical mistake, really. And just to give you the example of Makueni County, because I participated in the by-elections there after the demise of Senator Mutula Kilonzo. Just because I'm interested in politics, I'm a tactician, I'm a strategist, and I wanted to find the best leader for the people of Makueni. Makueni County has 6 constituencies. And those constituencies, Mboni, Kibwezi East, West, etc., have members of parliament. Those members of parliament then have a senator, one senator, that they liaise with on issues of legislation. But then they have a governor who is now in charge of the county, who supervises, obviously, the legislation, as well as the governance, the administration, the budget, etc. Is it possible, Bonney, that a governor would somehow be under a senator? The answer is no.
Right.
Of course not. Not anywhere in any jurisdiction.
Right.
And we borrowed heavily in our constitution from the American system,
right.
part of it from the, that's why we have cabinet secretaries per se. That's why we don't have assistant ministers, so to speak, as the president was alluding to just last week. Right. And so it's preposterous, and I've said this before, that you go to put poison in a document that is really the turning around point for this country. Right. Our constitution, Bonney, is so big and addresses so many of the issues that we faced in 1964 after attaining independence. And one of those, which was the most important, Bonney, is President Jomo Kenyatta at the time, you know, starved all the different, you know, areas off of resources as a way of controlling power, dissolved all of the other political parties, and made everyone accountable and dependent on one figurehead sitting in Nairobi, and that was His Excellency the President. Right. They even, barred people from using titles of President, His Excellency, and what have you. Right. What we've sought to do in devolution is to cure this by distributing power across to the periphery from the center. Right. You understand? Right. So that if somebody is in Narok, the only way that the only people who are flying flags were a coterie of individuals, the president and a few ministers, sitting on Harambee Avenue in Nairobi. Right. So how is someone in Narok going to know that the government is around?
So you have to take the flag to them.
Exactly. So what we've done now is take the flag to them, and as I've said before, it's very important that two things are done. A governor is going to be His Excellency the Governor, because he is in essence the chief executive of the county, and he flies two flags.
But the complaint has been when the president is visiting, governors are afraid to be called Your Excellency.
Hold on. Well, but that's because of all this confusion, because these are all small teething problems that we can resolve. So the governor should fly two flags. I'm on record of saying this severally, and there's a reason I'm saying this. One, the governor will fly the county flag on one side of his car. On the other side, he'll fly the national flag, because you don't want them to go rogue. We don't want them to become tribal warlords. So they fly the national flag, because even though he's a governor in Narok, in an area in Sotik, even though he's a governor in Lamu, even though he's a governor of Mombasa, he is still part and parcel of the greater Republic of Kenya. So he flies the national flag. The president, for his part, flies the national flag because the chief executive of the country, as well as the presidential standard. And so what happens is when the president visits, yes, he comes in his capacity as the chief executive of the country to a county that is part and parcel of that country. So ambassadors are His Excellency the ambassadors, because they represent an entire country abroad. The governor represents a county that is part and parcel of the entire republic. And the president is His Excellency as well, because he represents the entire country, which is part of the community of nations. So there's nothing to fear here. There's nothing to worry about, but it's just disingenuous for someone of the caliber of a professor of law to be playing these kinds of game for short-term political gain, to gain points with TNA or URP is ridiculous, preposterous, and I'm sorry, but Kiviki Kindure should be ashamed of himself.
Ndolo, we've seen that, and looking at what happened in Machakos, yes, the governor had his way. There are those who think, well, the governor is just the chief executive officer of this place, if he twice, he's just managing resources. We are the lawmakers, we drive this agenda. We should have the say of what should happen in where we live. But looking at the Machakos incident, does it set precedent for this kind of, you know, discontent among senators and governors? Because people will say, well, look at the Machakos case.
I can tell you for sure that in the case of Machakos, the senator just has opposed ideologically, if you may, and I'll explain that in a bit when we talk about Machakos. He has opposed the governor, but he hasn't in any way attempted to insinuate that he's above the governor. I know Senator Mudhama personally. He was my member of parliament for Kangundo. He hasn't in any way implied that he's above the governor. He does recognize actually that the governor has a cabinet, has constituted a cabinet. And by the way, you remember that when most governors were celebrating their victories, Mutua was very much ahead, naming his county executive members, setting up his cabinet, the different roles, apportioning budgets and what have you. So he does appreciate that. It's just that he disagrees as to the extent and the detail of how Machakos City is to be laid out and built, who is going to benefit, who's putting money, from where, why, etc. And I know we'll have a chance to talk about that. Unfortunately, and I think because Mudhama perhaps did not really do a lot of formal, education, if you may, he's not been able to articulate this very well. So he's just seen as a spoiler. He's seen as an analog, backward leader. But I think that he's raising an important point. But as you know, Bonney, as a media practitioner, sometimes you can have a very good point, but it's how you communicate that point.
Absolutely. Put it across,
Yeah, how you put it across. So if you don't do a good job, then people just don't understand where you're coming from.
But Benji, if we're getting to the debate where people are arguing who should be called His Excellency and not, and who should fly the flag or not, are we cheapening the debate in regards to supremacy? And where is the development agenda when you're still arguing about, I should be called His Excellency in my
I think that, yes, the way we use our time, Bonney, is very important because we have a lot of challenges. And obviously, if you've listened to Alfred Mutua, he really does get it. I absolutely have spent a lot of my time in the civil society, in the media, challenging leaders to do better, to do more, because the problems, the challenges, the poverty is unbelievable. And actually, just to quote Governor Mutua from, again, Friday, and I posted this on my Facebook and what have you. The governor says, when I was campaigning, I'm just quoting him here, I saw the poverty and I was traumatized. Old women grabbed me, because you go door to door, and they said, Governor, we're going to vote for you, based on a good campaign and you're on the right party and what have you, but please don't forsake us. And the young people said, we are sitting in the homesteads with nothing to do. And right now, even on these projects to prepare the ground for laying of the stone, they've already done the road. The road, parts of it has been graded and tarmacked and what have you. I understand 5,000 boys. 5,000 youth.
Quote that, yes.
Exactly. And so that's a big deal. I just returned from a trip to Dubai, and before that to the countries of Greece and Cyprus. And just imagine, some of these countries, as you know, are having this credit crunch problem, Bonney, from 2009. But if you look at the standards, if you look at the infrastructure, if you can imagine a country like Cyprus, that is a small island, has about, I would say, maybe like 60 of the huge thicker roads, well designed, intertwined, very clean, no people loitering around, etc. You come to realize that we have very urgent problems. We've got a lot of work to do to create systems that work for our people, because democracy is nothing, Bonney, if someone is hungry, if they can't access healthcare, if they cannot get a job and they really want a job. And so, yes, these urgent things are there, but it's also important that we set the parameters right from the beginning, so that we know the role of a senator, especially because these are new roles, so that we know the role of a governor. And in fact, in many jurisdictions, again, like the US, a governor position is a perfect stepping stone for higher office, which is usually the presidency. So again, you want a position where somebody is in charge of an entire county, that person has a cabinet, that person works with the local assembly, I think they're called MCA, members of the county assemblies, so to speak. So he's almost a miniature president, and there's no way, therefore, that he would be subservient to a senator who is, again, the higher level of a lawmaker than the member of parliament. And why this has been an issue is because this majority leader, the noisemaker, what's his name? Adan Duale. And Justin Muturi have had the temerity, again, to be very dishonest, very disingenuous, very irresponsible, to try to insinuate as the Supreme Court corrected them, that members of parliament are somehow superior to senators. And all this debate is a big turn-off to Kenyans, because where is the fire in the belly? Where is the focus on sorting out issues if everybody is being dishonest right from the top to the bottom? Again, members of parliament or the National Assembly cannot, I repeat, cannot, no matter what mistake was in the drafting and what have you, because the drafting had small issues after Naivasha, after the removal of certain pieces and parts and whatnot, and we were really trying to pass a constitution, and we don't want to amend it, you know, kiholela. You cannot have a member of parliament, for example, from Bonney, saying that he's more superior than Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., who himself sits over six constituencies. All right, and the member of parliament from Bonney or for Kibwezi East is one of the 6, and that's what they're doing. And so, in return, the senators have sensed, you know, that they've been socked in the jaw, and they're doing the same thing that they're being done to. They're doing the same to the governors.
But be that as it may, let's go to Machakos right away. All this that is happening, and then I wanted your way forward in regards to who needs to sort us out. Is it Charles Nechai who needs to come and say, hey, this is what should be happening? Because we do agree there are those gray areas that we can, yes, we'll sit down with the constitution and say, well, we're not so sure what this means, you know?
Yes.
But then what's the way forward? What's the neatest way to sort this out?
Charles Nyachai's voice is very important. The CIC position is very important. And by the way, allow me to publicly congratulate, and I have done so privately as well. Charles Nyachai has been a sterling steward of the Commission on Implementation of the Constitution. I don't know if it's because he's the son of a senior and wealthy guy. No, you know why? Because usually in these positions, Bonney, you know, as you can imagine, you'll have a lot of interference and a lot of inducement. All right? I mean, a lot of senior guys will try to say, Bonney, look, take this and give us.
But he's a little of a strong back, eh?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think that he's not hungry for money. You understand? And these are important lessons for all of us Kenyans learn, because Charles Nyachai has been so consistent. He has not hesitated to correct President Kibaki in the past. He has not hesitated to call out parliament. He has not hesitated to take on the judiciary. He has not hesitated, and he will not hesitate to stand up to President Uhuru Kenyatta. That is something in a young democracy such as this, where people are so cheap, where people are, you know, so vulnerable, so gullible.
So we need to hear his voice on this matter.
Charles Nyachai, we need to hear his voice on this. We need to hear his voice on the huge clash between the legislature and the judiciary. And suffice to say that Charles Nyachai has cut an image for himself as a credible, believable voice. That he is not going to take the special interest of one team because they are from his backyard, or because they're his dad's friends, or because they gave him some money. This is rare and necessary kind of leadership. And yes, he will do a lot to clarify. As a matter of fact, we should really make the time to reach out to Charles as the leader of CIC and have CIC take a position on some of these things very publicly. I think you see that they take space in the newspapers. He's been a little less vocal lately, but he's been very out there, very available for interviews, very available to give press conferences, etc. We need his voice on this. We need positions. He's done a very good to advise and correct even the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya. Again, he must be commended, and the body is still very much a credible body. And why this is important is because we've seen a trend now in the last just 3 months where any bodies that are independent and are performing, including some of the NGOs that have had the audacity to take the big issues of ICC and whatnot, have all of a sudden come in the crosshairs of Parliament that I dare say, and I'm sorry to say, has been a rogue. I mean, if you thought the 10th Parliament was a crazy Parliament, just look at the operations of the 11th Parliament so far, and you worry, you shudder to imagine.
We will get into
which way they're going.
Into the NGO coalition with government in all this. Let's just wind up the Machakos chat a little bit. Alfred Mutua has been touted as very ambitious. Others say he's setting himself to fail. There are critics who say, you know, this can't be.
Yes.
Well, there are also those people who say, hey, maybe this is our chance, especially the younger people saying, let him fail first.
Yes.
Where do you sit in all this debate?
Okay, let me tell you exactly, and thank you for the question, Bonney. This is a very important thing, and I will just explain this at the risk of seeming to be taking an unpopular position.
Right.
But you see, it's our job as analysts to not take the easy road. It's our job to take on the tough things, to take the bull by the horns, and to explain to Kenyans part of why they see the debates they see and what it means.
Right.
I am not Senator Muthama's spokesman.
Right.
All right, at all. But I'll tell you this. When the city of Nairobi, and by the way, Machakos was initially the first city of Kenya.
Right.
But there were issues around the availability of water and what have you, and then that got moved to Nairobi, which was a little more higher, a little cooler. I think Nairobi itself stands for, in Masai, a place of cool waters. The biggest beneficiaries and the biggest losers of the setting up of Nairobi as a city, the biggest beneficiaries were two people, or two races or tribes, if you may. The white colonial British settlers who had resources, who had who had money and facilitation from England for the Imperial British East African Company. Right. And secondly, the senior likes of the kinds of the Koinanges, the Michukis, who had worked again in the colonial administration, had gotten an education, had access to, education, to knowledge and what have you. These were seen as the major beneficiaries of the move to Nairobi. Right. And so what Senator Muthama is trying to argue, but is not articulating, is that when you go to Machakos and you bring sheikhs from Dubai, you bring in investors, international investors, local investors, what he's trying to argue is that, do the local people of Machakos have what it takes to invest in Machakos, or are they going to be quote unquote sold? That's what he's trying to say, but not in very good terms.
Do they have the capacity to invest in that kind of a vision?
The truth of the matter is that they don't. And so I think what they should do as leaders, and Governor Mutua has been very good at asking that leaders should not engage publicly in the media non-stop. That you pick the phone and you call a fellow leader and say, as a senator, our local people don't really have the muscle. It'll probably be their cousins from Muranga and the central part of the country that will come in and pump in money. Yes. But what can we do to ensure that it's a win-win for the investor as well as for the local guy? And so one of the huge debates has been, especially from the governor's policy pronouncement, that they're giving free land. So I think what he's trying to argue, and he keeps saying there's no free land in Machakos. I think what he's trying to articulate is that instead of giving the land, why don't you find a formula where the investors come in and part of what they give towards the land, the proceeds go to the actual people, so that 20 years, 30 years down the line, when there's a huge city there, you don't have the blowback of saying, well, this city was built on blood. And these things do happen. I think you've had the debate with the superpower, the United States, where you have the minorities saying, America's a great country, yes, but it was built on the backs and the blood. And
but Benji, using land as a bait seemed like the lowest hanging fruit for most of these governors in trying to attract investors, because they're saying, hey, I had the pronouncement from the governor for Nakuru saying, investors, please come. There's land. You will invest. You'll put your structures here. We'll give you land. Going forward, looking at how land has been used, what would be the other incentive for a governor trying to woo investors in his county, in his area, without really getting the crossroads of free land, as it were?
Do you know, Bonney, how the so-called land clashes issues became fertile for exploitation? Do you know how we ended up with the kind of conflicts that have led us as a country with our leaders being at The Hague? It was actually in the 70s where Jomo Kenyatta again had settled people from Central on land that was good land, that was fertile land, but in essence, unfortunately, had owners. So that today, and many people won't tell you this, you will hear people saying, yes, we do have certain communities in the Rift Valley, but I I guarantee you. And we talk to these, we talk in these different forums and these different workshops and what have you, and we interact and try to get to the bottom of what really ails Kenya and why do we have perennial issues of clashes ultimately up to the 2008 post-election violence and what have you. And I've heard it from a good source that if you go to Nyeri, it's very difficult to find somebody from Rift Valley that even has a shop in downtown Nyeri. And again, even though we don't shout loudly about these things, these are the facts. And so these are sensitive things. And what you can learn from that is, let us not approach the issue of land in a casual manner. Maybe Senator Mudhama actually has a point, as I've said. It's unfortunate that because he's not able to package the message in the right way, he's now being accused, I've seen even last night on social media, of having a dark heart, an evil mind and what have you. But I think I must caution the governors to be very, very careful because we don't want to establish problems that 10, 15 years will say, we're in such a hurry to set up counties that we made the same mistakes that Jomo Kenyatta made as he was in a hurry to settle people using the land settlement schemes. And unfortunately, some ended in the wrong places. And I've met at least a friend or two of mine that have told me, I have been attacked in 1992. We've been attacked again in 1997. In fact, we're not going back to our
How do we move away from land as the only incentive? I mean, I'm coming to set up shop in your county. Is there nothing else that a governor can offer investors other than land?
That's a very good question, Bonney. What we can do is, because we have not had a lot of innovation, because we have not been able to move on the frontiers of technology, and what you can achieve through virtual, cities and what have you, land still becomes the most tangible, the most, the most real asset kind of commodity that can be traded. And so it is very sensitive. People feel it is really the only source of wealth. In other places where economies are a bit more advanced, you want to trade in virtual commodities, including gold and what have you. And unfortunately now also with the discovery of oil and what have you, you can imagine in our mind as Kenyans, land is really the be-all end-all. What we can do to change that is to really move on the frontiers of technology, to embrace a lot of, and that's why one of the biggest things that we must do is not continue to condemn the West and to embrace China, is to look, both East and West and say, countries that are 200 years ahead, countries that are 100 years ahead, countries that have all these different things going for them. And we have good English-speaking labor here in Kenya that is cheap. What can they do to come and build harnesses here in Machakos? What can they do to come and build certain things here and create jobs for our people, so that we move away from the whole thing of land being, people sometimes just want to hold land just to know they have it and do nothing with it for 50 years. We want to create an economy that is vibrant, that means something on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, that determines an hourly wage, that builds commodities, and that reaches out to different markets. And so we have got to bring in the kind of partners that have the experience, that understand how to build these business models, that lack labor, affordable labor, and that can benefit a lot from doing business here, but also from employing our young people, so that it's a win-win, and we in a sense now start deriving the utilities of this land for.
Why is it that people think Mutua is living ahead of his time? Is it that Kenyans are not used to this kind of a thing?
Kenyans are not
we don't
used
believe
to,
it could be.
Yes, Kenyans are not used to the kind of politics and the kind of leadership that Mutua is offering. Sense of purpose, sense of urgency, fire in the belly. What Kenyans are used to is conmanship kind of thing, where politicians come, they run around, they wear the right shirts for the party, they hand out a few, bribes, and then they disappear. Then they come back and do the same thing, and the whole time, the entire 5-year term, they're thinking of how they can accrue wealth for themselves. They are thinking of how they can accrue an arsenal for the next, political contest. And that's basically the way it's been. So someone like Mutua, I think that in 2 years, you will see things really moving and shaking. And it's going to, I think, politically even destabilize. And we'll talk about that at the right time. Different major political players in this country. Because you can imagine, after a 2.5-year run, for someone to come back and show a tangible track record and say, just imagine, when I came in,
I gave you a
this
CD.
was just a piece, this was sand.
Right.
And 2.5 years later, this is what I've brought. And you know, Mutua went to school in Abu Dhabi for many years.
Right.
And just looking at, I think the temperatures when I was there were getting to about 42 degrees centigrade. Everything runs on air conditioning. And just to imagine that Dubai has just come up in the last 25 years, half of Kenya's life, 25 years. And the kind of developments you see in the Jamaria and the highest building in the world, by the way, is in Dubai. World's top 7-star hotel. Some of these built on a beach.
And Ukambani is equally hot, eh?
Exactly. And so I think for Mutua, the reason we talk about dreams is having lived there, he always had a dream to do something. To do something urgently, to do something quickly, to do something big. There's a place called the Marina, which is basically just artificial body of water around very many buildings. And we had dinner there with the ambassador to Kenya, a very, very, very smart young guy, Balozi Gele. And we were just saying that just that small area, which is really no more than a 50-acre, radius, is perhaps the entire GDP of a country like Kenya. I mean, so when you bring these kinds of concepts and this kind of approach, of course, Dubai is also benefiting from the rule of a family that is very, very big on culture. You do not con in Dubai. You don't cheat. It's basically an issue of if you divert money, the culture. And there's very serious enforcement. I was at a 5-star hotel and they told me if the water temperature in the pool is not what it should be, and the enforcement guys check from the city council, and they find it's not consistently, maybe twice, they'll shut you down. Just imagine. It's everything is to the letter. I actually think that on a service level, it's a notch above the United States services. You arrive at the hotel at 3 a.m., people are awake, people are bubbly, people are friendly, things are working. It's unbelievable. And though all that, as Charity Ngilu said, ironically, Charity Ngilu, it rises and falls on leadership. It's a leader at the front who has to be the one to carry the torch, to set the pace, to set the example. Which is why some of the pronouncements by President Uhuru on why people should not be eating money, that was
powerful.
It's powerful, and he must continue to do that. Absolutely.
All right, great. And of course, we'll be looking out for Mutua. So the message here is good luck to Senator Mutua.
Yes.
Great.
Governor Mutua.
Governor Mutua.
Yes.
Let's focus on a few issues that probably have come up in the recent past. You've talked about values and cultures, and we're just coming from a week of road accidents and carnage, and you see the National Highway and Safety Authority coming up and saying, hey, maybe it's time to change the curricula in terms of how we train our drivers. We've seen them install cameras on the road, and there's the new traffic lights and all that. But we don't see a lot of good behavior. There's even a report that said a lot of private users are the people who flaunt these traffic rules. Let's just put a spotlight on what ails us in regards to road safety. That is an issue that has come up consistently. And looking at the kind of measures that we're kind of putting on, people are saying, yes, these are stop caps. We need a more sustainable solution
and
to
more
this.
Organized,
What is the way forward in regards to bad behavior on roads?
Let me just say this to my friend Engineer Michael Kamau and the President as well. Even as we try to move ourselves forward as a country and really increase on the numbers that need to be increased, that is the numbers of those employed, the numbers of income per capita and what have you, and reduce the number of those dying from diseases, HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, as well as road carnage. I think one of the areas that these leaders are going to have to drive on is the culture. The problem with Kenya is the culture. We have, in the last 15 years especially, metamorphosized more into the culture of a market, where someone, things got so tough that it's so hard to make money. A matatu driver just has to do what he has to do to collect the extra shilling to make ends meet. And so, because of that, blinding fury, and focus, human beings become like packages. You saw an incident a few months ago where a lady who didn't have 10 shillings from Kangware was thrown out of a moving matatu and she died. So what these leaders have to do is embark on changing the culture, it was very commendable what Engineer Kamau said the other day, that this is our collective madness. This accident is our collective stupidity. We are not going to tolerate this. We will start destroying these shelters from anywhere and everywhere. That is the message.
What is this that Mishuki did or had that subsequent people in charge of this docket have never gotten?
Engineer Kamau has it.
Right.
And basically it's the kind of resolve, the kind of focus, the kind of idea that doesn't seek to be politically correct, doesn't seek to be liked and accepted. It just focuses on what's right. You must have seatbelts. You must have them have uniform. They must obey the law. The problem with the way things are now, and that's why I'm saying, Bonney, we have to work on the culture, is, you see, even these cameras you talked about, unfortunately, you've got to ask yourself, these cameras, if our lights are not even working properly yet, because everything has got to be scalable, especially on technology.
Not just in the cities.
Yes.
Actually, it's in the major roundabouts, not everywhere.
If the traffic lights are not already working, then what's the purpose of scaling up to the next level, which is cameras? Also, if we don't have the kind of police beats and patrols, etc., that are ideal, because the police have had a lot of issues and they need a lot of work. Is it a risk, therefore, that we'll put these cameras and maybe 50% of them, when we do an audit a year down the road, will have disappeared? The answer is yes. It's highly likely. And so, the only reason there's an urgency for putting these cameras, guess what? Is because someone is going to earn a lot of money in these kinds of things.
There's a tender somewhere.
The president himself has got to really be advised. I'm seeking out to Joshua Kutuni. Keep your eyes and ears on the ground. And Jomo Geshaga, keep, as young guys, keep your eyes and ears on the ground. I think it is very clear that the president is not interested in eating and stealing money. Advise that a certain project is obviously just coming up for the sake of people wanting to eat money. Again, if you look at the costing, these cameras are costing 6 billion shillings. That's a bit on the higher side, Bonney. Is that the best use of money that we could have used?
But then the problem really is the software, because if you look at Mishoki's time, we didn't have the cameras and whatnot.
Exactly.
So how do we work on the software?
Again, by consistent enforcement, number one, by changing the culture, by punishing wrongdoing and punishing it hard. It's unfortunate what happened with the accident on at Mutindwa. And you know, I realized that the companies, all their buses were grounded, and a lot of people feel that it's a bit unfair, etc. But really, I don't really feel sorry for them. What we need to do is we need to really upscale our law enforcement. You know, to Kimayo, and we've been, you know, talking to him and trying to help him. We really have to upscale our standards for law enforcement, for presence, for police presence around the country, for warning proactively, so that police are not also just reactive, so that it will be very clear in this country that if you break the law, there are consequences, and very serious ones. Not just you know, just having a situation where it's business as usual. You saw the incident of the rape against this lady, Liz, who was thrown and broke her backbone and what have you, and then the police somehow made a judgment call to make the young guy slash grass. I mean,
and actually the protest was bigger outside the country than what we experienced here.
Exactly, and it's embarrassing. It tarnishes the name and the image of the country, that this is some sort of banana republic where police don't even understand, you know, the different statutes, where they're almost illiterate in a sense. And then also, of course, it enhances crime. By now, not only has a rape being done, but you have, in essence, facilitated those guys now to escape justice, to run away. There was rumors that they were probably given time to escape the country and what have you. And so, I mean, we've got a lot of work to do. But again, it starts with the top leadership. And that's why,
as Gilo said.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I commend the Cabinet Secretary, Kamau, for trying to put his foot down against all odds. Remember, these matatus are owned by senior people and senior businessmen, etc. So for you to be able to put your foot down that way is because you're not going to accept $1 million shillings bribe from any SACCO, from any individual. And with the president backing you in that way, we really have got to adopt the stance of zero tolerance to certain things. Not just you know, lip service, but zero tolerance to nonsense, and a sense of urgency where every quarter, every 3 months
Right.
of the full fiscal year, because the year is 12 months. Every 3 months, and you have 4 of those, every quarter,
Right.
the government, like a company, should be able to show results that we have cut crime by this much. This is how we've done it. We've increased vehicles. I like how they have increased vehicle equipment for the police by 1,100 units.
Right.
It's very important that we see now that these are having impact, not just to be doled out to, politically correct friends and cronies, but really for the greater good of the entire Kenyan populace,
Right.
from the person in Marsabit to the person, from Turkana to Lamu to Migori. The entire Kenyan populace has got to feel that a new constitution is in place, that a new government is in place, that things are happening to move the entire country forward.
Right.
Everything else is really just
So again, it falls on
retrogressive.
leadership. Great.
Absolutely.
Benji, as we bring this to a landing, I want your comment on the week that we are looking out for, the week ahead. We're expecting and watching out for the Ngilu troubles. That is one big story that we will be looking out for. What do you look? What's your outlook for the week in terms of Ngilu? What do we expect to happen from the president, from Parliament?
It's a dicey one. It could go either way, at least 50-50. It's very possible she could go. There's also, as the week unfolds, we're going to project that we will probably have a lot of contestation on the Judicial Service Commission, on the so-called Sholei matter. That is threatening to be a constitutional crisis of sorts. I must advise Parliament to rise up to its role in a parliamentary democracy.
Right.
There has been too much, there's been too much, for lack of a better word, just a lackadaisical, laissez-faire, jokey type of environment in Parliament, where, as has been reported, it's been some sort of auction house, where MPs are available for any kind of support or motion that you may. I remember having breakfast with a member of Parliament and discussing the VAT bill, and he just laughed and said, well, you know how things are in they just come in, then they dole out these little things, and people are busy. There's many times there's no quorum, and so once you just get the technically required quorum, a lot of these bills are passing just in a very mechanical kind of fashion. You wonder when the debate was done. Something even like the media bill. I mean, when did it originate? When did it get to the point where a media house can be charged 20 million shillings? I mean, when did we have that debate as a country? And so I think that Parliament is letting Kenyans down in a big way. It's a big lesson for Kenyans because members of Parliament are the largest number. They're the ones who come to you looking for votes. And so even as you practice your tribal politics, I think you see the opportunity here to understand that legislators, that lawmakers play a very crucial role to counterbalance and check the executive. And they need to be men and women of very serious integrity, of intellectual acumen, that are responsible, that are curious, can do the research, and that most importantly have the best interest of the Kenyan worker at heart, of the Kenyan resident, of Kenyan business. And right now that's not been, and that's why very horrible bills are coming through. In fact, if you remember, on one of the bills, I think for the appropriations bill, that the Supreme Court had to, weigh in on their voice on. The president basically said that his hands were tied because if he didn't sign it, in other words, he was acknowledging it's a bad bill. But if he didn't sign it, then there would be no money to go out initially for devolution, and basically the counties would be stuck. And so, without doing proper bills, in fact, to the point even where now the bill on media is on the president's desk, and he's being cajoled and pressured publicly and privately to return it. You see, you are embarrassing the president. Bring to the president's desk good bills.
His party is the majority.
Exactly. So you're embarrassing the president. Bring to his desk good and healthy bills that have passed the test at every stage, that are wholesome, that are for the greater good, that will enhance Kenya's position and Kenya's betterment once they're signed into law. But now you're extending the period and eating into time for other debate on issues of land and medicine and what have you, by doing certain bills over and over again. And so Parliament has really been This particular parliament, the 11th one, has really been the weakest link so far.
So we're looking at the Ngelu issues, the dispute over in the judiciary, and both are expected to be driven heavily by the court side of parliament.
Exactly. That's pretty much what we're expecting this week. And of course, as is the case in this country, there's no week that goes by without a controversy.
We'll
and there's the unknown.
All right.
Yeah.
Benji Ndolo,
nice talking to you,
Bonney, for the way it is.
Asante.
We have a clearer picture of where we are and where we need to go, but as we said, everything rises and falls on leadership.
Absolutely.